Hey Chi Alpha! This week our spiritual discipline is the practice of prayer. So I know for me, prayer has been the most challenging part of my daily walk with God because it's hard to talk to someone who you can't see, and I just start thinking about what I want to eat for breakfast and the fact that I wish I had a dog with me right now. But Scripture talks about prayer so much. One of my favorite quotes about prayer is from Tim Keller when he says that prayer turns theology into experience. And it's really at the heart of communing with God. So in this season when we find ourselves more or less stripped of the many activities that we would fill our time with, what better time to instead fill that time by turning to God in prayer and interceding for the world around us. Now, when it comes to prayer, there's two errors that people fall into. The first is to see prayer as a prayer list and solely that, to see prayer as just a means to an end. And this is sad because you totally miss the relational aspect of prayer and you begin to view God kind of like a cosmic slot machine, and it's really a means to an end. The other error is, on the other end of that, is only seeing prayer as relational, that you get to spend time with God, but you don't know if prayer actually has consequences, and so you don't pray with faith or expectancy. And now, when the disciples asked Jesus, "Teach us how to pray," Jesus taught them what we know as the Lord's Prayer. And in the Lord's Prayer, he models that prayer is actually both. That prayer is both relational and consequential. He calls God our Father, Abba, the most intimate word that you can call God. And by doing so, he demonstrates that prayer has a relational aspect, that we can commune with God. At the same time, he also teaches his disciples to pray that your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven, and teaches us that we can come before God with prayers and petitions and supplications and ask God to move in our lives. And so I would challenge you this week to view prayer as both relational and consequential. And if you find yourself leaning more on one side or the other, to push yourself to kind of meet in the middle and to see prayer as both of those two things. So this week we're going to practice praying through the Lord's Prayer and using that as a template for our prayers. And if you look on your devotional, every day there's a different topic that you can pray for. That's a way to pray for the world, for the church, and for everything that's happening in this time. Now, I have two practical little thoughts before this video comes to a close. First is consider the place where you pray. I find it interesting that when Jesus taught his disciples on prayer, he first talked about where to pray before he even talked about what to pray. And Jesus himself, over the course of his life, modeled withdrawing to places where he can be in solitude. And so consider, where is a place in my life right now where I can be just with God and him alone, uninterrupted? I know that this can be challenging if you're home with a lot of family members, so you might have to get creative, but consider where you will pray. And second is consider the posture. In our Western Enlightenment perspective, it can be easy to think, what we do with our bodies don't really matter. But that's just not true. Just like in worship, something happens when our body, soul, and spirit are all aligned in the same direction. And so I would encourage you to consider posturing yourself in different ways physically, whether that is standing in adoration, kneeling in confession, lifting your hands up in surrender and dependence. There are some different practical suggestions also in this week's devotional. So those would be my two final thoughts on prayer, is consider the place and the posture. And I hope this week, Chi Alpha, that we can grow in our practice of prayer, and that We can both commune with God relationally, but also intercede for this world and for our community, because prayer is both relational and consequential.